Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Fit Chicks Chat. My name's Laura Jackson.
And I'm Amanda Quinn.
And on today's episode, we are talking some personal conversation
Yeah.
around what really has changed for us in our fitness and in our nutrition and in the way we approach health as we've been in our 40s. So, when we started Fit Chicks and we even started this podcast, we were still in our 30s. We started Fit Chicks, we were in our 20s. And while there are things that have stayed the same, there are a lot of things that have changed. And this has been a really big conversation that we've been having out together, as well as with coaches within our academy and just women in general. Because unless you are entering or in this season of life, you don't understand it, right? You don't necessarily know what's happening. So you kind of think, well, why aren't things working the way they used to? Or why do I not feel the same way as I used to about my workouts? So I think this is a really fascinating topic for us to kind of chat about because I'm sure that a lot of people out there are feeling the same way.
I agree. I think that so many people probably do feel like things are shifting, things are changing, things are maybe harder, or I don't feel as motivated to do certain things. And they almost feel like they're doing something wrong, right? Like they think it's like, oh, like I'm a failure, or why can't I do this the same way with the same intensity, or why can't I do that, or whatever. And it's like, no, it's just we all change and grow and things shift and change. And it's like embracing change, but looking for new opportunities for change, I think is the key for that. But also, when you were saying like some things have changed, there's also some things though that when I think back to when we started Fit Chicks and even before that when we were working out, there's still some of those foundational things though that have never changed. I don't know about for you, but I know for me,
Oh,
there's
totally.
some there's some foundational things that like I don't think will ever change, but definitely there is a lot of shifts that have happened and that are still happening for me now that I am the young age of 44.
I know I'm going to be 44 soon. It's
Wild.
crazy. It's crazy how
Yeah.
fast time goes by.
Mhm.
But the one thing I am very, very grateful for is that I have had a health practice. I have focused on my health all throughout my 30s and into my 40s and will continue to do that because that has and will make a huge difference in the quality of my life and my health moving forward. So we
Mhm.
want to kind of talk about this like in a sense of a bit of our personal stories and then also for a lot of you who are listening, maybe you are brand new to your journey. You're like, well, wait a second, I'm in my 40s and I'm just starting. The average age of women who take our certifications at FitChicks Academy, the range is anywhere from really 40 to 60, with the majority being between 45 and 55. So
Yes.
whether it be starting a new career or you're wanting to really dive in to learn about yourself, right? This season of life is different than your 20s or your 30s because there's a lot of changes that are happening hormonally, and
Mhm.
this is something that is very fascinating, right, for women. And we're never taught this in any certifications either, which, even for us when we're having this conversation offline, I find it so fascinating because I'm like, I never even thought about what exercise or fitness would be like in my 40s or nutrition. Or I literally just was like, okay, it's fitness and nutrition. And, this is what I do and this is consistent and this is whatever. And I never really, because I was never taught about my menstrual cycle. I was never taught about reproductive years versus, perimenopause. Perimenopause, I didn't even know that word up until I think like I turned 40. Even in health
Yeah.
circles, I barely knew it. So
Mhm.
perimenopause, then menopause, and then postmenopause. Like we go through so many different stages of life as women, and we kind of are given this blanket conversation around exercise and nutrition. And I can say too, even for me, a lot of this, there's things that I've said on this podcast, there's things that I've talked about with students that I literally did not take into account those changes. So it's kind
True.
of like, you know what I mean? Like you don't know till you know, but it's like being in that season of life changes it even more. Like it makes it feel so much more relevant to me.
Not only relevant, but I think it's like it just brings it to your awareness, right? Like it's you don't know what you don't know. And you, when you're in it, it's like what we've talked about too, where we were talking about having babies, right? Like when you have a baby, like when someone has a baby, you're just like, "Oh, that's amazing and congratulations," and you're so happy for the person, but you don't actually understand the ups and downs, the emotional responses, um,
The
you know,
physical changes.
challenges, the physical changes, the emotional changes, the lifestyle changes, like all of those things until you're actually in it, you don't really understand it. You can try to understand it in theory, but it's really challenging until you're actually in something to understand it. So I feel like it's the same thing even with, as you're getting older, as you're going into like whether it be perimenopause, menopause, like I don't know what menopause or postmenopause feels like. I just know right now what perimenopause feels like, right? And it's like I can feel the differences between when I was 20 versus now and
Mhm.
how I train, how I eat, how I sleep, all of those things have shifted.
Well, and that's what's really fascinating. Like I was saying, like, we are never taught this stuff. We're never even taught as young kids about, as women, about our menstrual cycles, right? And that's the
Mhm.
foundation of everything that changes within our hormones. So we talk a lot about hormones at Fit Chicks Academy, but for women, the majority, like our hormones are very different than people assigned male at birth, right? Like, so for us, we have two main sex hormones, which are estrogen and progesterone, and men only have one. They have testosterone, right? Their
Mhm.
testosterone pretty much throughout a 24-hour day peaks and valleys, but like literally it's like highest in the morning, then it goes down. But it's not like this massive fluctuation for the majority. So, and testosterone is a hormone that makes you feel strong and confident and masculine and all of these things, right?
Mhm.
And even in women, we have testosterone too. So that's like their kind of mood and their responses and their stuff, like it doesn't change much within their lifetime, right? Except for when their testosterone starts to decrease later on in life, which is like male menopause that we're not really to talk about because we're talking to women and we are women. So they're kind of like this static thing, right? And for so long, we were taught, oh, women just have their periods, they're emotional, they're hormonal, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, and then you go into menopause, then you just have hot flashes and you just have to deal with them because that's what happens. And then, you gain weight and you gain it all around the middle and then you're going to struggle to lose that for the rest of your life and blah blah blah, right? Like it's like this whole story that we're told, whereas if it started with us even just learning about our period, which were you ever taught about your period, what happens in your body during your period, other than every month you release an egg and you have your period? Like
No, never.
no, like in school or never, and we were always taught that a period was a bad thing. Oh, I'm on my period, it means like it's such a negative conversation around it. Like there's just so much verbiage and shame around women's health too over years and years and years that we've also kind of taken on, but that's another conversation. But so like basically a quick little thing, like during our period, the first part of our period estrogen is higher, then we ovulate. The second part of our period progesterone is higher or elevates, because that's what essentially our body says, hey, do we have a baby, do we not? Progesterone keeps us pregnant. Then it realized, wait, there's no baby, progesterone drops. Then again we have estrogen come up, right? But even that
Mm.
cycle of estrogen being high and low and then progesterone being high and low is why we feel different throughout the month. And we've had people on our podcast before who've talked about exercise cycling, right? Like
Yeah.
exercise matching your cycle. So, like in the first part of when your estrogen is higher, that's when usually you are more like confident, you're more extroverted, you're more go, 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 right? You're like good to lift weights. That's when you can build more muscle. And then progesterone is when, and we all feel this during the month, like you feel different. And then
Yeah.
during the progesterone, you feel more introverted. That's when you usually do more like yoga. You're still doing things, but that's also when your body can burn more fat. So it's kind of this interesting dance. The problem is when
Mhm.
these hormones are out of whack, right? And it's all about the balance between the two. It's not like one is better than the other. It's like they have to be working in conjunction together. But we're never even taught what happens in our period. So then we get to perimenopause and those hormones start to really change their levels and stuff like that. And we're wondering why throughout the month, maybe, before I'd feel most of the month I'd feel pretty good for my workouts or I'd feel excited to work out. And then suddenly it's like I have no energy or desire or motivation to work out anymore. Like I just feel like crap. But we
Yeah.
don't even taught that, oh, wait, this is now what's happening is these two hormones, and we got to pay attention to that.
Mhm.
And it just
Instead,
becomes this
yeah,
fascinating thing to me. Like, how are we not taught this?
I know, and it's really just, all we're taught is that the story is that once you get this point, you just you gain weight, like you said, you gain weight. It's part of the story. You push through your workouts, you do these things when really, if we just looked at it from the perspective of your hormones are changing and it is going to shift your energy and you need to match your energy according to, you have to really pay attention to how you're feeling and really match the outside with your insides in the sense of like match your workouts to your energy cycles and pay attention to how you're nurturing your body and what you're feeding it and those kinds of things to match everything. Then that's when you can actually start feeling your optimal best as opposed to trying to push through and feel like you're lagging and then you feel like you're sucking and then it's just this whole really it just adds more negativity to that energy that's already been created by a lot of like media telling us that this is just what it is.
Well, and that's what I really think. I think there's a lot when it comes to women's health, especially in this stage of perimenopause. Because even too, people just talk about after menopause has happened. They don't talk about that transition into it, right?
Mhm.
And that transition into it is different for everybody. There's so many
Definitely.
factors that play into it. And it's like, if you don't know your body, and like, you and I were talking about this offline like a little while ago about, what is the real purpose of what we're doing with Fit Chicks Academy? Like, what is the real desire? And I was saying, for me, it's like I want women to be able to lead their own health. I want them to be able to lead their own nutrition, their own fitness, their own like feel because to feel like you are a victim to the media and to your doctors and to what everyone's telling you your health should be or shouldn't be is the worst feeling in the world. And when you feel like, okay, my body like is out of whack, I'm gonna go learn about what's going on. I'm gonna like be my own experiment. I'm gonna be my best client. That to me is the best feeling in the world. Like, because mindset goes into it too, but your physical body has to be in line with your mindset. And like for me, this work, all of it, like learning about fitness and nutrition, and now like really diving into this second season of life, like it's so important for me to be able to feel like I'm driving the bus because that's the thing that most women say is suddenly I feel like my body is not my own. That's what most women
Yeah.
like literally say once menopause hits. Like, I feel like my body's not my own. My workouts that I
They're
used
like
to
in a
do
foreign
don't work
body.
anymore. Yeah. I don't feel like myself. I don't
Yeah.
feel like the energy. I don't feel like the confidence I had. I feel like I'm walking around somebody else's body. You know what I mean? Like it's very, and that to me takes away from you doing your best work in the world. Like if you, everything starts with your health, everything.
Yeah.
So it's like,
No,
for
it
me,
does.
that's why I just feel like these conversations need to happen because whether you're a coach or whether this is you listening, like this is what is going on that no one is talking about.
Mhm. I agree. And I think, asking yourself the questions, like maybe even writing these questions down to be like, what was I doing in the past that doesn't feel like it's working for me today when it comes to fitness? Or what am I potentially doing that maybe cause like what am I pushing through every single month? And when is that happening in the month? And really tracking it and paying attention to it, I think is really helpful because it just allows for you to see like, is there a pattern that is happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And could it be related to, especially like perimenopause is a little bit harder because like, especially when you start getting into perimenopause, because your period becomes like less frequent, it becomes a little bit more sporadic and stuff like that. But paying attention to even just like your energy cycles and how you're actually feeling and matching it and really looking at that because it'll really help you identify like, is there certain parts that maybe you are just in like a lower or a higher progesterone state. So then all of a sudden you do need a bit more just like self-care, calm down, not calm down, but like calming exercises and movement and giving yourself some more space. I don't know. I know even for me, that's the one shift I think that has happened massively when I look back at like my journey from when we were in our 20s living in our townhouse together, working out together and stuff. And I would push through no matter how tired I was. I could be like like dead to the world tired, and I'd be like, I'm going for a run, right? And like it didn't matter. Like I just was like, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I could find the energy source somehow, some way. And sometimes those would be like my best runs. I get home and I was like, wow, that was great. Or I'd like push through any workout and do all these things. Now, I mean, I really try to like listen. Like there's days where I'm like, oh, I should get up and do my workout, but I'm like, I also am really tired. So I'm like, I'm gonna choose sleep over this. And I'm really trying to prioritize more like for me at least, it's prioritizing more self-care practices over routine, if that makes sense. So it's like not just throwing my routine out the window and saying like I'm not going to work out ever again or anything like that, but it's really like really looking at like what has my week been like? What has my day been like? How am I feeling? And where do I need to prioritize more? And I know that for me and for everyone that's kind of like going through these stages, we really have to pay attention to the self-care practices, the sleep, hygiene, to be looking at like what you're feeding your body, that kind of stuff, because that stuff really takes full effect. Because like when I think back to when I was younger, it's like I could operate on 3 hours sleep and just operate throughout the
Mm,
day, push through my workouts, no big deal. I could like eat junk food and not feel terrible. Like just nothing really like phased me. And even when I look back now, like when I was younger, I'm like, man, like there were times like I still ate like nutritious food, but at the same time, I was eating some stuff that wasn't so nutritionally dense and things like that. I was binge drinking. I was doing all these things. I'm like, I don't do any of those things now, but my body is still shifting and changing. So it's like, how can I take the best possible care of it? Because when you're younger, you're not necessarily thinking about it as much. And now that's really my focus is like, how can I take the best possible care of my body, especially as it's starting to change? Because it's almost like my body needs more love during this time. Like it needs more self-love. Does that make sense? I feel like I was just
totally.
rambling, but I'm like,
Totally. And like that's the thing I think
that's my
that,
focus.
well, it's like I think it's really boiling down to as well, like I love the idea, like obviously of self-care, and part of that self-care has to be movement and nutrition and mindset and all of those things, right? Because those are the things that hormones are going to respond to. Those are the things as you transition through all of these seasons that your body is going to respond, like help your body to respond to the changes. But I think like you were saying, like the first step is self-awareness, to really start to listen to your body and know like, okay, because I'm the same way. When I was younger, I used to do long bouts of cardio. Like I
Mhm,
would be like running on the treadmill for an hour, going out running for an hour. I would be doing like 10Ks. I would be on the like a lot of cardio.
mhm.
And back then too, I lifted lots of weights, lighter weights, you know what I mean? Like now I do heavier weights, shorter workouts, hit training when I am doing cardio, short cardio. I don't, even though it is stress inducing on the body, long cardio is so stress inducing. Like I'll never forget when we had a client years back and she was like, I'm running a marathon and I'm gaining weight.
Yeah,
She's like, I'm running more than I ever have, and I'm literally gaining weight. And it was because the season of life she was in and the amount of stress she was putting on her body, her cortisol was all out of whack. And again, our female hormones are very sensitive with other hormones. So when these hormones are all out of whack, like they all feed into each other being out of balance.
mhm.
And it put her body in a state of store mode. And
Yeah,
she's like, I don't know what's happening because I'm working out and exercising and burning more than I ever have. And it's like that was the big thing for me, is that used to really work for me too, like longer bouts of cardio.
really.
And then when I really shifted, then I was doing more hit style workouts, but I was doing longer hit style workouts. Like it was still in the gym for a longer amount of time. Now I'm like, when I'm in the gym and I'm lifting heavy or I'm doing hit, like I'm in and out.
Yeah,
Like my gym takes no longer than 40 minutes. My actual workout time is usually 30. And
yeah,
that's because I'm just like, okay, like if I do a Peloton, it's 20 minutes. If I do like, and I just know for me where I'm at right now, that's where, and then the rest of the time, I still do movement. I go for long nature walks. You know what I mean? Like I play with my kid. I like a lot of the stuff that I do exercise outside of that is still movement, but it's not the same as like putting myself in that elevated state for a period of time.
yeah. No,
Also,
same.
I'm very sensitive if my blood sugar is out of whack. If
Mhm.
I'm eating foods consistently and I'm not focusing on what we teach in Fit Chicks Academy, I'm not balancing blood sugar. I gain weight really quickly. My body responds negatively. Like it is, it's these things that I'm so happy that I already had adopted before. But I know there's a lot of people who are starting their journey in this age range and they're doing these things. They're going doing the long bouts of cardio. They're going and eating, cutting out like all carbs, which women, we still need carbs, but we need good carbs and we need low glycemic carbs and high fiber carbs and all those things, right? Like we're like that, part of those help to fuel these hormones. Like there's so many things that they're doing that are just even more detrimental than to the symptoms and then to the way they feel. So it's like this, I don't know, like I just find for me that shift has been very interesting and I'm just definitely really aware of it as I'm heading into this. Also, as we are working on a project with the amazing Dr. Cheryl Allen, that we'll be releasing very shortly to the world to really help to empower more coaches and help to empower more women to lead their own fitness and nutrition in their perimenopause and menopausal journey. But it's just stuff that I think this conversation is really important because, I see it in my own life, whereas, and I hear it, that's like the number one, like two things I hear all the time. I feel like my body is not mine anymore. And the second one is what I used to do is not working. I've done
Exactly.
this forever. I always do this. It's not working.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, but the thing is that if you feel that way, if you're listening right now and you feel either of those things or you saw either of those things, know that you're not alone, and that's super normal.
Mm-hmm.
What I used to do back in the day, like what Laura was saying, like when I used to do crazy hard workouts, I used to do, I used to eat, like sometimes I'd eat chips for breakfast. No joke. I used to binge drink and I wouldn't gain weight really. Like I was very like I was just fine. Like my body just would kind of just maintain itself and it just kind of did whatever. And then as as I've aged and now being 44, it's like I need to pay more attention to my nutrition. I need to pay attention to my wellness. That's what I was saying. Like my biggest thing is my wellness stuff. I sleep as much as I need to. I take rest when I need to. I try to, if I need a bit of a mental health break or things like that, I take them now because I just feel like it has to all balance. And if it doesn't balance, I can feel that when it is imbalanced. And then definitely with my workouts, like I do a lot of like bar workouts, which is like, a lot of just smaller movements, more dance inspired. I'm not a dancer by any means, but I do these kind of movements because sometimes those I call them those are like my almost like my rest day workouts where it's still like I'm moving my body, but I'm not moving it in a way that is super strenuous. It's challenging in different ways. It's challenging on like smaller muscles, it's challenging on stability, mobility, that kind of thing. But I like doing those as in between workouts because I don't want to always be putting myself in this constant like super like stressful state, my physical body. It doesn't like it anymore. And I've noticed that. And so I found that since I've started doing those, I feel strong. I feel good. It's still giving me like the balance that I need of movement. But then again, like you, doing a lot of walks,
Yeah.
doing a lot of just movement in that way, just like natural movement, going for a lot of bike rides with my little one and things like that in the spring and summer and fall. Just doing those kinds of things are really replacing a lot of that, like, no, I need to do an hour of cardio. Like I can't remember the last time that I've done an hour of cardio. Like
Oh
I
God, me neither.
genuinely like if I tried to like rack my brain, I'd be like, it was probably many years ago.
Well,
Like
especially
many,
when
many
you
years
when you
ago.
realize, wait a second, I get better results when I work out less. You're like, what the
Yeah.
heck? Like,
Yeah. You know.
but this is where too, and I mean, I just want to wrap this up with, I really feel like, and this is kind of, a prequel to a lot of conversations we're going to start having on this podcast. We recently just wrapped up the launch of our holistic nutrition weight loss coach certification. And, we had one of our students who was on our guest podcast and and I we just had one of our recent grads on and she's 59 years old and she's like helping other women in this season and she's leading her own nutrition, her own health, and she looks and feels better than she ever has.
Yeah.
So
It's literally just that's the thing, it's never too late to take control of your health, like, it's never too late to so if you're listening right now and you're thinking, "Hey, what I did in my 20s isn't working, and then now, media is telling me that this is just the way it is, and this is what's gonna happen, and I just gotta succumb to it and just realize that this is just what it is." Like, just know that, like, you do have options, but you have to start paying attention a little bit more to, like, what your body is telling you. Look at the signals, look at the cues. And try to like really dive a little deeper into really paying attention to what your body needs, how you need to fuel it differently, what you need to do from a movement standpoint that feels good for you versus just if the old thing is not working. It's like the whole saying of like if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But if it is broken, if you feel like it's broken, then you got to find how to fix it. Right?
Well, and I also think it's, utilizing like this whole podcast is kind of around the main takeaway is just around self-awareness. So as I was saying, like we're going to be starting to talk a lot more about this on the podcast and we're going to start adding these conversations in because not only is it what's really going on in our lives, but it's also what we see with our students, with our clients. Like these are the conversations that women need more support in. So I think the main takeaway here is just becoming aware right now. Is this a problem for you? Are you finding things are different? Are you finding your body doesn't feel like yours or it's not working anymore? And that's the first step is just acknowledging nothing's wrong with you, but there are some things you probably do need to shift or you need to shift for your clients to support these
Yeah,
changes. Because like anything, we don't know what we don't know. So if you don't
exactly.
know yet about fitness and nutrition and mindset and management through that season of life, how are you going to know how to do it? Just like if you didn't know how to lose weight or you didn't know how to work out, right? Like it starts with that. So hopefully this gives somebody out there a little bit of a reprieve, feeling like, okay, wait a second. Yes, that's me.
It's
And
not
then we do
me.
have some really great stuff that's coming up. So make sure to
Stay
check
tuned.
out our website, fitchexacademy.com. Also, if you have any questions or anything you want to hear on the podcast, please email us at info@fitchicks.ca. And let's just make this next chapter of life even better than the ones before. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye everyone.